Welcome to Mining 901. I'm Aburengwi. Imagine walking through a city street, cars humming by, streetlights flickering, and people tapping away on their smartphones. It all feels so seamless, so ordinary. But beneath this everyday reality lies a hidden infrastructure, a web of elements extracted from deep within the earth. And here's the part that no one talks about. A huge chunk of these materials come from one place, Africa. We hold 30% of the world's proven mineral reserves. So today, we are unpacking one of the most important forces shaping our modern world, critical minerals. You can't go to any mining or just energy transition conference and not have at least half the agenda be about critical minerals. Where were these critical minerals 10 years ago, by the way? And why does the world suddenly seem to care so much about critical minerals? These minerals don't just power the clean energy transition, they are the backbone of the tech revolution, fueling everything from AI to cloud computing. But what exactly are they? Critical for whom? And what makes them so essential? Let's find out. Simply put, critical minerals are those that modern economies cannot function without. They are critical because they are both indispensable and vulnerable. Indispensable in that industries from EVs to data centers depend on them, and vulnerable because their supply chains are concentrated in just a handful of geographies. So who benefits from them? And why isn't it Africa? Despite holding 30% of the world's mineral reserves, why is it that this continent isn't the primary beneficiary? You see, every era has its defining raw material. The Stone Age had iron smelting, the Industrial Revolution ran on coal and iron. In many ways, it still does so today. Today, the world is increasingly running on lithium, cobalt, nickel. These are the building blocks of EVs, solar panels, wind turbines, and the ever-expanding world of technology, from AI to cloud computing. Without them, both the clean energy transition and the technological revolution will grind to a halt. Let's put that into perspective. The International Energy Agency predicts that by 2040, demand for lithium alone will increase 40 times. That's an astronomical surge, driven almost entirely by the shift towards EVs and energy storage. And that's just one mineral. The clean energy transition is built on a carefully choreographed dance of elements, as I like to think of it. And behind the dance, there is chemistry. Take EVs. Inside every EV battery, lithium ions zip back and forth between electrodes while cobalt and nickel work together to determine how far a car can drive on a single charge. Then there's manganese, and South Africa has a lot of manganese. Manganese ensures that battery stability and longevity are well managed. Solar panels, they are deceptively simple. You think it's just glass and silicon, right? No. Beneath the surface, silver ensures efficient energy transfer, while aluminum frames keep the entire structure durable. Then there's the world of wind turbines. If you've heard of rare earth elements, that's the stuff that wind turbines rely on to ensure that the powerful magnets keep the blades intact. Otherwise, there is no wind-generated electricity. Each of these technologies depends on an intricate balance of minerals. But here's the kicker. These minerals are not evenly distributed across the globe. And when something is not evenly distributed, we know wars ensue. That leads us into the next segment, geopolitics. Playing a game of chess. But instead of kings and pawns, the pieces are lithium, cobalt, rare earth elements. The players, you have China on one side, the US, the European Union, and yes, whether we like it or not, Africa is at the center of the game. And I would like to believe that every country in Africa today is thinking about its role in the critical or mineral space. The DR Congo, as an example, produces 70% of the world's cobalt, yet 85% of this cobalt is refined in China, with top producers incorporated in, believe it or not, the UK, Switzerland, China. You can do the exercise for almost all critical minerals and the picture remains unchanged. This means that while Africa supplies the raw materials, the real economic gains occur elsewhere. This dynamic is part of a larger geopolitical chessboard where nations scramble to secure the minerals that will shape the future. The US has categorized critical minerals as a matter of national security, aiming to diversify its supply chains to reduce dependence on China. Meanwhile, the European Union is investing in partnerships with resource-rich nations to establish new refining facilities outside of China's dominance. For China, controlling mineral processing is not just about economic gains, it's a strategic advantage. By refining and manufacturing high-value components domestically, China ensures that global industries, from EV makers to smartphone manufacturers, remain dependent on its supply chains. This leverage gives China significant influence over global technology and energy transition, an influence that African nations currently lack despite being the primary source of these raw materials. If you have a solar panel on your roof today, best believe that it was made in China. If Africa continues to play the role of supplier rather than producer, we risk being sidelined in the technological revolution. And while it may seem difficult to imagine Africa as a global leader in minerals and tech, history tells us that such transformations are not only possible, but they have happened before. Consider South Korea. Today, it's beautiful. But back in the 1950s, South Korea was one of the poorest countries in the world, but today it's an economic powerhouse in tech and manufacturing. Or Singapore, a tiny island nation with no natural resources, has managed to transform itself into a global financial and trade hub. Even China, powerhouse today, but once upon a time, China was a primary exporter of raw materials. But it has managed to leverage strategic industrial policies to become the world's largest manufacturer and a dominant force in global supply chains. These countries prove that with the right policies, investments, and vision, economies can rise from the periphery to global dominance. The same opportunity now stands before this continent, but only if it invests in local processing and manufacturing. It could disrupt this imbalance and emerge as a key player in the global economic order. But why has it been so difficult for Africa to replicate these transformations? The challenges are deeply rooted in history and structural barriers, things that you've heard before. Unlike China, which unified its industrial strategy under strong central planning, African nations often struggle with regional coordination, making large-scale industrial projects harder to implement. Infrastructure remains another major hurdle. Nations like South Korea and Singapore invested early in high-tech transport and manufacturing facilities. Much of Africa still grapples with unreliable power grids, inadequate road and rail networks, and insufficient industrial zones, making local value addition very difficult. Unlike China, which aggressively sought and directed foreign direct investment into strategic sectors, many African nations experience capital flight, inconsistent policies, and underdeveloped financial systems, limiting access to funding for large-scale industrial projects. Political instability and governance issues further serve to complicate long-term planning across the continent. These are significant challenges, but they are not insurmountable. The key lies in strategic long-term planning, enforcing policies that support local industries, and in the process, investing in education and skills development. If Africa seizes this moment, we could redefine our position in the global supply chain and become a powerhouse in the critical minerals revolution. So what are we to do? Africa cannot afford to be a mere supplier of raw materials. We must lead. The key to this transformation lies in 4 critical areas. Infrastructure development being one. Without reliable roads, railways, energy grids, we will continue to struggle. The second speaks to local beneficiation and policy reform. Governments must enforce policies that ensure a percentage of extracted minerals are processed domestically. Countries like South Africa have already demonstrated how refining platinum locally can create immense economic value. The third bit, human capital. Africa's youth are its greatest asset. By investing in STEM education, vocational training, and AI-driven mineral exploration, the continent can position itself as a hub for innovation. Circularity is another thing worth exploring. Instead of relying solely on traditional mining, we should embrace urban mining and invest in technologies that make extraction cleaner. If Africa plays its cards right, we could shift from being the world's mineral supplier to becoming a value-added leader, a place where minerals are not just extracted, but they are refined, they are engineered and integrated into a global supply chain on our terms. In my mind, if Africa fails to control its critical minerals, the consequences will be severe and far-reaching. The continent will continue to be relegated to the role of a raw material exporter, missing out on the economic gains from processing to manufacturing. Jobs that could have been created in African refineries and tech industries will remain overseas, reinforcing economic dependence on foreign powers. The wealth generated from these resources will continue to benefit others, while local communities struggle with poverty and environmental degradation. In a world increasingly shaped by clean energy and high-tech industries, we risk being left behind, watching yet another industrial revolution unfold from the sidelines instead of leading it. In closing, critical minerals are the key ingredients needed for the clean energy transition. They power EVs, they fuel our digital lives, and they anchor the very technologies that define the future. And yet, Africa, the richest continent in terms of mineral reserves, has yet to fully capitalize on its wealth. The world is changing. The demand for critical minerals is only going to increase. The only question left is, will Africa control its destiny? Or are we going to watch another industrial revolution pass us by? Drop your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you found this video useful in any way, I'd appreciate your support just by sharing it with one person. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, keep supporting Mining 901. Till then, take care. Cheers.